Today we'll be generalizing whatever we did for two populations to multiple populations. We know that in the univariate setup, when I want to compare means of two samples, I use t-test. But when I want to compare means of multiple sample, we go for ANOVA instead of t-test. Now actually there is one possibility that suppose I have say 5 populations and I want to compare means of those 5 populations. One possibility is I could conduct t-test for every pair out of these 5 populations. So in that case I would have 5 choose 2 pairs. So I can conduct 5 choose 2 t-tests. And if some of them get rejected, then I'll come to know that yes, not all of them have same mean. But generally we don't do that. We go for ANOVA. What is the reason behind this? One important reason is related to what is known as multiplicity problem or multiplicity issue in testing of hypothesis. Now what is this issue? See, all of us know that no statistical test is 100% perfect. Every statistical test is associated with two types of error, type 1 error and type 2 error. Here I'll be focusing only on type 1 error. So type 1 error is when you reject H0 even though it is actually true. So in the t-test setup it would be you falsely claim that the two means are different even though they are actually same. That would be type 1 error. We know that for a single test, generally we assume that probability of type 1 error cannot exceed 5%. That's how the test procedure is designed, that the probability of type 1 error should not exceed alpha, which we generally take as 0.05. However, if I go on conducting multiple tests, then the probability of type 1 error would be 5% for each individual test, but that would mean that overall the number of errors would increase. What do I mean by this? What I mean is, if I carry out 100 tests, then we know that out of these 100 tests, we would be committing type 1 error in roughly 5% of the tests. That is, roughly 5 times out of 100, my conclusion is going to be wrong. If I carry out 1000 tests instead of 100 tests, then roughly 50 times I would be committing error. So number of errors, number I am saying, not the proportion, number of errors goes on increasing as the number of tests goes on increasing. Hence, generally it is not advisable to conduct multiple tests simultaneously. Hence people thought that instead of conducting 5 choose 2 t-tests, can I have one test, and that's why ANOVA came into picture. So what ANOVA does is, it tells you, so you have 5 populations, then my ANOVA H0 would be mu1 equal to mu2 equal to mu3 equal to mu4 equal to mu5. That is, all these have same mean, versus mu I not equal to mu j for at least one pair ij, for at least one I not equal to j. So remember, ANOVA doesn't say that if H0 is rejected, then every population has different mean. It does not say that. What it says is, at least one population has mean which is significantly different than other populations. Okay. So this is what ANOVA does in the univariate setup, and whatever can be done by 5 choose 2 tests, ANOVA tries to do it by one single test. If later, if the H0 gets accepted, then you don't have to worry anything. If H0 gets rejected, then it would mean that at least one of the means is different. Then you may want to look by conducting t-tests or some such tests known as post hoc tests, that which means are exactly different and which means are same. Okay. Now one simple question which might have come to your mind, or some of you might already be knowing answer is, why do we call it ANOVA? We know ANOVA stands for analysis of variance. We are dealing with means. My H0 doesn't involve variance. Why do we call it analysis of variance? So what we know is, how is ANOVA performed? you try to break down total sum of squares into two parts, between group sum of squares and within group sum of squares. So between group sum of square you call as, say, treatment effect, and within group sum of squares you call as error effect. So what we are trying to do is, if there is any variation, of course we are studying statistics because there is variation, so whatever variation is present in the data, we try to break down that variation into two components. So first component says that, okay, is there any known or assignable cause for that variation which is given by treatment, and then second component says that, okay, is there any error component in it. One simple example I can give in this context is, consider height of two siblings. Okay, height of two siblings, one of them is female, other is male. Okay, they are siblings, so their parents have exactly same heights, right? I mean, I don't mean that, okay, mother has same height as father. What I mean is, both of them have mother who has certain height and a father who has certain height, because they have common parents. But still, their heights are not exactly going to be the same. The two siblings need not have exactly same heights. Okay. Now, the variation in their heights can be due to two factors. One factor is their gender. The girl is likely to have less height than the boy, and then other is the error or the random factor which you cannot actually measure, quantify. Okay, so that is what we try to do in ANOVA. We try to analyze the variation. So whatever total variation is there, we try to break it down into two parts: variation which can be explained and variation which cannot be explained. Hence the name analysis of variance. Okay. Now we have already studied equivalence of t-tests in the multivariate setup. So we saw Hotelling t-square, which is equivalent to the t-test. Now we will try to see what is equivalent to ANOVA. So it is known as multivariate ANOVA, that is MANOVA. So it is equivalent to ANOVA. So first I need to have k different population. So now my notations are going to get much more complicated. So please be careful. Okay. So suppose y11, y12, y1, n1. These are IID observations coming from NP, mu1, sigma. Okay, let me try to explain the notations first. First, remember, even though I am writing y11, I am still using vector notation. So now each of these is a p cross 1 vector. Okay, so y11, y12, yn1, 1n1 denote n1 observations coming from first population. Okay, so this is my population 1. My mu1 is also a vector. It is mean vector of first population. Then I would have y21, y22 up to y2n2 as IID observations coming from mu2 sigma. So this is my population 2. And in such a manner, I have yk1, yk2 up to yknk. These are IID observations coming from NP, mu k, sigma. This is kth population. Okay. So just like ANOVA, we are having more than two populations. So let me assume we have k populations. Number of observations from each population need not be same. So I have n1 observations from population 1, n2 observations from population 2, nk observations from population k. Each population can have different mean, but we are assuming that the variance is same. This is exactly what we do in ANOVA. In ANOVA also, my underlying assumption is each population has normal distribution. Mean can be different, but variance has to be the same. Okay. And we further assume that all these populations are independent of each other. Okay. we assume that all these populations are independent of each other. In this setup, my null hypothesis becomes mu1 equal to mu2 equal to mu k. Okay, that is all my mean vectors are same, and my alternative hypothesis becomes mu I is not equal to mu j for at least one I not equal to j. Okay, so at least one population should have a different mean vector. That is my alternative hypothesis. So I want to develop a test procedure to examine this null hypothesis. Now how do I proceed? So we saw one likelihood ratio test for mean of a single sample. So we are going to try and generalize that to mean of multiple samples. Okay. Okay, let me use this side because it's too visible. Okay. Now if I want to use likelihood ratio test, I need to first write down the likelihood. Now I have k populations and I have a sample coming from each population. So technically I can first write likelihood for each population separately, and then the joint likelihood will be product of all these likelihoods, because we have assumed that the k populations are independent of each other. Okay. So let me write down likelihood for ith population. Likelihood for ith population, we can directly write down log likelihood because I am assuming now you have enough practice of writing likelihood. So minus ni p by 2 log of 2 pi minus ni by 2 log of determinant of sigma, because sigma is common so I don't have I coming here, and then minus half trace of sigma inverse S plus ni, then y I bar, that is mean of ith sample, minus mu I prime sigma inverse, I need to write Si also because my CSSP matrix will also be different, sigma inverse yi bar minus mu I. Okay. Let me focus on the likelihood again, log likelihood. This term is quite easy to understand. This term is quite easy to understand. Everything which is problematic occurs here. So yi bar is the sample mean for ith sample, mu I is the population mean for ith sample, sigma is common, and I have sigma inverse Si. So from where does this arise? I am not going to solve it here. It's a homework. Why? This is actually a question from question bank that I sent yesterday. I think question bank 8. Okay. So I've asked you to compute MLE. One question is compute MLE of mu1, mu2 and sigma if you have two populations. And the next question says generalize it to k populations. So this is exactly same. And believe me, it is not at all difficult. You just have to write down the likelihood in a proper form and you will get something like this, and then you rearrange and get the estimates that you want. Okay. Estimates anyway I will write down here so you can verify your answers from the question bank. So this is log likelihood for ith population. So overall log likelihood would be sum over all these. So it would be sum over I going from 1 to k of this entire thing. So ln of li. So this would be, the first term would become minus p by 2 summation ni, I going from 1 to k, then minus ln determinant of sigma summation ni, I going from 1 to k, and minus half, and we have same story. So trace of sigma inverse sum over Si, I going from 1 to k, because trace and finite sum can be interchanged, plus sum over I going from 1 to k, Ni, yi bar minus mu I prime, sigma inverse yi bar minus mu I. Okay. Now we have to maximize this likelihood with respect to mu1, mu2, mu-n and sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma n. Just to make sure that we know the correct parameter space, what will be my script theta here? My script theta overall parameter space is mu1, mu2, mu-k and sigma. Sigma we are assuming as common. So each mu I belongs to Rp and each sigma, actually there is only one sigma. Sigma is P cross P, symmetric, positive definite matrix. Okay. Is it okay? This is my parameter space, overall parameter space. And under H0, my parameter space reduces to script theta naught, which is common mu and common sigma, where mu belongs to Rp, because under H0 we assume that all the means are same. So mu belongs to Rp and sigma P cross P is again symmetric, positive definite matrix. Okay. So I have script theta is overall parameter space, script theta naught is parameter space under H0. And we know that difference between these can contribute to my degrees of freedom. Difference between the dimensions of these can contribute to degrees of freedom. Okay. Now, if I maximize this log likelihood, we have to do two things. We have to write down overall log likelihood as well as we have to write down likelihood under H0. In likelihood under H0, my each mu I will be replaced by the common mu. If you want, you can call it mu naught. Okay. So, let the common mean, population mean of course, common population mean under H0 be denoted by mu naught. Okay, then your mu naught hat you need to find. Then that would be MLE of mu under H0. So under H0, since all of them are same, you can actually try to see that the MLE turns out to be simply the sample mean over all the or the entire sample. Okay, so this actually turns out to be entire sample mean. Why? It's very obvious. Let me explain again in case you have missed it. See, under H0 I have only one mu and one sigma. So it is like my all the n1 plus n2 plus nk, if I denote this by capital N, then under H0 I am kind of saying that all these n observations are coming from p variate normal with common mean mu naught and common variance coincidence matrix sigma. As a result, we know that in such a scenario, this common mean is estimated by the overall sample mean. So mu naught hat becomes entire sample mean. If you want to write it in terms of individual sample means, if your individual sample mean is y bar I, then I need to multiply by Ni, I going from 1 to k and divide by summation Ni. Right. Again, I hope this is clear that this is same as this. Okay. See, I want to, this is total number of observations. So this is easy to understand. This is total number of observations, which is capital N. So in the numerator, I need sum over all observations. Sum over all observations I can compute by this way. So N1 into first group mean, N2 into mean of second group and so on. So I get sum over all observations divided by total number of observations. So that is my estimate of mean under H naught. Is it okay? Estimate of sigma under H naught would actually be overall CSSP matrix divided by capital N. Again, this is coming from the fact that under H naught you actually have a single sample of size capital N coming from NP mu sigma. So your mu hat and sigma hat are same as the MLEs that we derived earlier. Okay. Now the question is, what happens to mu hat and sigma hat when you are not under H naught, that is when you are in the overall parameter space? So let us try to write down the answer. As I told you, this is actually a homework problem, so I won't be explaining the in-between steps here. It is in the question bank, so you can try solving. But under H1, so this is under H1. If under H1 my mu 1 hat would become y1 bar, mu 2 hat would become y2 bar, up to mu k hat would become yk bar. First of all, can you visualize this? Of course, you can try solving, but there is some intuitive explanation also. See, when I write down the complete likelihood, we write the complete likelihood as the product of k individual likelihoods. So, when I try to differentiate with respect to say ith mean mu I, only that part of the likelihood contributes which is coming from ith population. All the other populations will not have any mu I in them. So when I take derivative with respect to mu I, all those other components vanish, and what I am left with is just contribution from ith population, and hence mean of ith population becomes MLE of population mean for ith population. Is it okay? And as I said, you have to actually derive and confirm that this is actually the case. Okay. And what about sigma hat? So under H1, let me call it sigma hat 1. So under H1, this sigma hat becomes S1 plus S2 plus SK upon N1 plus N2 plus NK. We had used something similar in hoteling t-square, and as I say again, this is part of your question bank 8. So this is summation SI upon capital N. This is my sigma hat under H1. Okay. So I have mu hat and sigma hat. We also know now that assuming that you have already solved or you will be solving question bank 8, and from the MLE derivations that we did earlier, you know that generally whenever you maximize the likelihood, the exponential term you always get only NP by 2. Everything else gets cancelled, where N is the corresponding sample size. So in this particular context, I will get capital N. As a result, whenever you do LRT, the exponential term gets cancelled. It doesn't contribute. The 2 pi term gets cancelled because it is same in numerator and denominator. What remains is only the determinant of sigmas. So my likelihood ratio test statistic becomes determinant of sigma under H naught, so sigma naught hat, and determinant of sigma under H1. Okay, sigma 1 hat, this whole thing raised to minus n by 2, capital N of course, minus capital N by 2. Okay, so this again you can compare with the likelihood ratio test for single mean, and it would be clear to you why this happens. As a result, my test statistic can be slightly modified as overall sigma hat, which I wrote here, upon sigma naught hat. Now, what is sigma naught hat? Sigma naught hat comes from the total S. So this is like based on entire sample, S based on entire sample, okay, divided by capital N. And what we know is this sigma 1 hat is actually this. Okay, so let me try to rearrange things. So sigma 1 hat we know is S1 plus S2 plus SK, all these are matrices, divided by N1 plus N2 plus NK. Okay, this we know. Can I try to find some relationship between this and this? If I want to do that, what I need is, in this I'll need to bring in individual means. Okay. Again, we have done this in the case of LRT for single sample. We are doing something exactly similar. So, this sigma naught hat times n is actually S. So, S we know is summation I going from 1 to capital K, J going from 1 to Ni, Yij minus overall mean, that is y bar, Yij minus y bar prime. First, let us try to see if you actually understand what is happening. Okay, what is happening? See, in S I need sum of square kind of term for every observation. So every Yij I have to take its deviation from overall mean, then multiply it by its transpose, and then I have to take sum over all of them. So sum over j and sum over I. Now here I can bring in the group means. So I can write Yij minus Yi bar plus Yi bar minus Y bar. Similarly, Yij minus Yi bar plus Yi bar minus Y bar whole prime. Okay, we have done this many times. We will treat this as one term, second term, third term, fourth term. Okay, then Yi bar minus Y bar, this would become 0 because it's, deviation, sum of deviations from mean and so on. So if you simplify this, it's very easy, just trivial arithmetic. Simplify this, you are left with summation Sk. So summation Sk would actually be Yij minus Yi bar into Yij minus Yi bar prime. So that would be, Si. Yij minus Yi bar and Yij minus Y bar prime is nothing but CSSP matrix for ith population when you take sum over j. So this is summation Si, I going from 1 to k, plus from other terms what I would get is summation Ni Yi bar minus the overall mean, that is Y bar, into Yi bar minus Y bar prime, I going from 1 to k. Try to solve this. This is very easy. You just need to write down in between steps carefully and see which terms get cancelled. Okay. So using this relationship, we are going to construct the test statistic. Okay, so what I get is lambda raised to 2 by n as this, where my S1 is like S under alternative, that is, it is summation I going from 1 to k Si. Okay, individual sum of individual SIs. Okay, so this is what we get. And lambda raised to 2 by n is also called as Wilcoxon's lambda. Okay, lambda W, that is, sorry, not Wilcoxon. Wilcoxon is your test. Wilks lambda. Okay, Wilks lambda. Now using this, we are going to have something similar to what we used to have in univariate ANOVA. In univariate ANOVA, we know that total sum of squares is divided into two parts, between group sum of squares and within group sum of squares. So here what we have is something similar. First of all, we know that S1 is sum over SIs, and we know that each SI individually is p-variate Wishart with Ni minus 1 and sigma as the parameters, Ni minus 1 degrees of freedom and sigma. So by additivity, anyway populations are independent, so SIs are independent. So by additivity, this S1 will also be Wishart with sum over Ni minus 1. So sum over Ni minus 1, I going from 1 to k, and sigma. So sum over Ni minus 1 would become capital N minus k. So that is, this is equal to Wishart with N minus k sigma. Okay, so S1 is Wishart with N minus k sigma. Okay. Similarly, I will call this denominator term as say T. Okay, so my T matrix is this S matrix plus summation I going from 1 to k Ni yi bar minus y bar minus y bar whole prime. Okay. So let us focus on this term. What is this? This is weighted sum of deviation of each group mean from the overall mean. So deviation of, obviously we are kind of taking square. So deviation of each group mean from the overall mean is nothing but your treatment effect in ANOVA. Right, that is how you define treatment effect. You can go back to your BSc notes and check. That is, your treatment sum of squares is defined in such a manner: ith group mean minus overall mean whole square. So this is your treatment effect. This is your total sum of squares because you have addition of two sum of squares. So this is like error effect. Okay, error effect. And you can understand why it is error effect, because each S1 is coming from summation SI. SI, you know, each SI is yij minus yi bar, yij minus yi bar prime, sum over j going from 1 to Ni. So basically each SI is kind of deviation of every observation from its own group mean. So this is like within group type of thing. Okay, this is within group type of thing. This is between group type of thing. So this is exactly equivalent to what we have in univariate ANOVA. So we will now have the ANOVA table. Here we would call it MANOVA table. So my MANOVA table, I will have source, degrees of freedom, and instead of sum of squares, I'll have sum of squares and sum of products matrices. Okay, so sources are three: the group or the treatment. This is first source, then error, and then total. So for group, degrees of freedom, we can see here that this error type of thing has degrees of freedom n minus k. So error degrees of freedom are n minus k, which come from the Wishart. Total degrees of freedom we always know is n minus 1. So this has to be k minus 1. Okay, then only it will get balanced. The matrix here is T minus S. Okay, T minus this S1. And error matrix is actually my S1 and total matrix is T. The explanation for that is here. Why S1 is error matrix, why T is total, and the remaining part is your T minus S1. Okay, so this is your MANOVA table. The test statistic, actually the exact distribution of the test statistic is quite complicated. It turns out to be product of independent beta random variables with some degrees of freedom. So we won't go into that. But we have some approximations. So one approximation is minus m log of Wilks lambda. So Wilks lambda means you don't have to worry about the power. This follows chi square with p into k minus 1 degrees of freedom. Okay, where m is n minus 1 minus p plus k divided by 2. Okay, so minus m log of Wilks lambda follows chi-square with p into k minus 1 degrees of freedom, where m is n minus 1 minus p plus k divided by 2. There is another approximation also. Let me write that also. So another approximation is, it is given by Rao. So you define R as 1 minus lambda w raised to 1 by s upon lambda w raised to 1 by s. This into ms minus 2 small lambda upon p into k minus 1. This follows f with p into k minus 1 and ms minus 2 lambda, where s is some complicated form. Let me write it down. S is square root p square k minus 1 square minus 4 divided by p square plus k minus 1 square minus 5, and small lambda is p into k minus 1 minus 2 divided by 4. Okay. Of course, I don't expect you to remember this formula. You can just have it in your notes. If at all in practical you need this formula, I'll be providing the formula. Don't worry about that. There are some specific cases where you can have F distribution. I would write those formulae down in the notes and I'll give it to you, because anyway there's nothing to explain. Okay, there are some special cases, but mainly you can easily remember this form. It's not difficult. So this form you should remember always. Okay, at least one distribution you should always remember. So this is how MANOVA works. Now can you think of some situation where MANOVA can be used? For example, in the Hotelling T-square we were comparing two populations. Now I want to compare multiple populations. So suppose I want to compare, say, number of patients and number of deaths due to, say, COVID-19 across different countries on different days. Okay, so what do I mean by that? For, say, country 1, I would consider data on, say, day 11, day 12 up to, say, day 50. Okay, first 10 days we leave because generally they have different distribution. And suppose I have here number of new cases and number of deaths. So I have a bivariate data. Okay, I have how many observations? Day 11 to day 50 means I have 40 observations from country 1. Suppose similarly I have 40 observations from country 2, and so on. I have, say, 5 such countries, and I want to compare whether average number of deaths and average number of new cases is same or not across these countries. Then you can use MANOVA. Okay, we are assuming that all days have same distribution, which need not be the case. Okay, so it's kind of like we are assuming the number of cases have stabilized. They are not, I mean, the rate is not increasing, which is not exactly true. Okay, but this is just one example. Homework is try to think of some more examples where MANOVA can be used. Of course, when we do practical, I'll give some examples in the practical sheet also. Okay, so let me stop here.